What about these statements? Made in a facility that also processes wheat, soy, egg, peanut, all of that, and made on shared equipment. These statements are voluntary statements, and so what that means is that the FDA does not there's no legislation regarding these statements, and foods are not inspected or anything because of these statements. These are not helpful statements. I believe that in most cases they're liability statements. Lawyers are advising companies to include them or not to include them. And are they helpful for people with celiac disease? I don't think that they are. This is an example. One company with a potato chip that says made in the same facility that processes wheat. One company may choose to write it, another company may choose not to write it. They both may have wheat in the facility. What they're saying is we have wheat in our facility. They're not saying where it is. If it's on shared equipment, then they're telling you that. But these statements are not meant to replace good manufacturing practices. The equipment would still need to be cleaned in between. They would have to be very cautious regarding food allergens. So I say, and you'll find, for example, Nature's Path cereals. A lot of them say right on them gluten-free, and at the bottom it says made in a facility that also processes wheat. The majority of patients who come to me avoid these foods altogether because they think they're not safe. And I think you can ignore these statements and expand the repertoire of foods in your diet if you are avoiding them. So this is the most common question of the majority of my patients. It's very unusual that I see a patient that has not already started the gluten-free diet. Everybody, by the time they come to me, I would say 99% of people are already on a version of the gluten-free diet. But I also see a lot of patients who are 100% gluten-free but not eating a nutritious diet at all. We've had a few patients actually who've had multiple deficiencies and some with toxic levels of certain types of vitamins, and I think Dr. Tennyson will be discussing that as well. But here's an example. So what I do, if any of you have seen me, I'll go through your diet with you and ask you what you eat for your breakfast, your lunch, and your snacks. This is what nutritionists do. So this is an example of a gluten-free diet. Who thinks that this diet would be healthy? Nobody. Okay, so it's an easy one. I did that on purpose. So it's the gluten-free cornflakes, gluten-free tapioca bread, for snacks, pretzels, crackers, cookies, and fruit. And then for dinner, meat, rice, or pasta with vegetables. Gluten-free prepared foods. Is that your diet? Gluten-free prepared foods are almost always low in fiber. Not almost always. It's getting better, but the majority of them are low in fiber, high in fat, sugar, and calories. They're not fortified with extra vitamins and minerals. And I have a lot of patients after going on the diet who become overweight, constipated, and have high cholesterol levels. Some develop type 2 diabetes as a result if they're eating a lot of these prepared gluten-free foods, which are not really that good for you. I usually try and encourage people to move away from them. So these are some of the common gluten-free flours. Years and years ago, prior to all these other nutritious grains, which I will talk about today, the most common flours were the tapioca, the cornstarch, the potato flour, and the white rice flour. I did a comparison with wheat flour at the bottom with regards to fiber, carbohydrate, protein, folate, and iron. And obviously the most striking one is the tapioca flour, which has 0 fiber, 0 protein, 0 folate, 0 iron, and 119 grams of carbohydrate. FYI, this is the flour that's used in a lot of breads that are used in, and this is the only flour that are in a lot of the gluten-free breads that are out there. Not remotely nutritious and very high in calories. Cornstarch, similar. Potato, it's from a vegetable, so there's a little bit more fiber, but the carbohydrates are still very high. And then the white rice flour, also very high in carbohydrate. So as you can see, the wheat flour, someone asked about going gluten-free prior to diagnosis. This is one of the reasons why it's not a good idea if you don't have celiac disease, because there's a lot of extra calories and not a lot of vitamins and minerals or fiber. So the gluten-free whole grains. As Dr. Green said, it's fine to tell someone you can't eat this, this, and this, but you have to also say what can you eat. And these are some of the really super nutritious gluten-free grains that are available in various forms. Amaranth, buckwheat, millet, quinoa, brown rice, wild rice, sorghum, and teff. and I compared 1 cup of the flours for these for fiber, protein, and iron. Thinking back to the wheat flour, I didn't include carbohydrate, but you can see that, for example, chickpea flour has way more protein even than wheat flour, as does the amaranth flour. And another thing to keep in mind with this is if you're using the actual grain for the quinoa, like the actual seed, you would get probably 3 times, I don't know how much more, but a lot more fiber than what's in the flour version. The flour version is more processed. So again, there are certainly ways within the gluten-free diet to include lots of iron, lots of fiber, and lots of protein from the starches or the grain fat fractions that are used in the various products that you're buying. If you don't see any of these on the ingredient list, it's you know, you have to get your fiber and your protein and your iron elsewhere in your diet. These are some numbers that I thought were quite interesting in terms of the fiber content. The average fiber requirement for an adult would be 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day, which is what is recommended. And these are some really, really high fiber foods choices. So a lot of the patients we see have constipation, and if you look at a cup of flaxseed, this is unprocessed in any way. There's 45 grams of fiber, which is a lot of fiber. Ground flaxseed, you reduce the fiber content a little bit. Has anyone heard of mesquite flour? Yay, some people have. So this is one of the gluten-free flours. You've heard of probably mesquite as used for flavoring, like for a smoky flavor, and that's certainly true. You'll see it in ingredient lists of various foods, but they also, you can take the pods from the mesquite plant, which is off to the left, and grind it up into a flour which has extremely high fiber content, and you wouldn't need to add very much to your baked goods, maybe 1 or 2 tablespoons per cup of another type of flour to increase the fiber content. Montina, has anyone heard of this?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, this one's easier to find. There's a company called Amazing Grains, and they are selling this Montina flour. You can buy it as a pure baking flour, also grown in a field, or you can buy it as a mix. So they've added some of the Montina flour into the mix. This has a sweet flavor, as does the mesquite, and it helps the foods to hold together nicely. And as you can see, it's very high in fiber. It's the same amount of fiber as ground flaxseed. Cornbread is the highest fiber gluten-free option right now. It's inedible if you cook a product like 100% cornbread. It's horrible tasting. But if you add a couple tablespoons in with your baked goods, you don't need very much, it will increase the fiber significantly. And the rice bran as well, also high. It has the same amount of fiber as the ground flaxseed. So again, these are all tricks to help if you are constipated to bump up the fiber in your diet. And you don't need very much of any of these. This is a slide that I've been showing some of my patients where not all of the gluten-free grains are created equal. I think you can gather that because of some of the previous slides. But white rice flour, this is an enriched white rice flour. So most, like a basmati rice or just a plain rice that you would buy would have no iron in it at all and no fiber. This one has no fiber, but it does have some iron because it has been fortified. If I used brown rice flour, the calories would be the same, the protein would be a little bit higher, the fiber would be a little bit higher, but the iron would be about the same. Compared to amaranth, which is one of the gluten-free whole grains. If you look at the portion, always important when you're comparing to look at the portion. So 2 cups of amaranth versus 1 cup of cooked rice. The calories are less, the iron is 3 times higher, the fiber is 4 times higher, and the carbohydrate is almost half. So there are ways to modify your diet, and amaranth is delicious. There's a company, New World Foods, that sells amaranth, but you can also buy Bob's Red Mill or any of the brands that you find in a health food store. You could buy the actual seed and cook it yourself. This is just a slide that compares all of the gluten-free flours in terms of the nutrients that are in them.